A lot of it is an intuitive process. I don't really have a absolutely mapped out idea of how it's going to end up, and that's the way I like it, because that's what gives it the fun and the magic and the end result. Not knowing what's going to happen, and when you find something new or something different in technique accidentally, it's great. It makes the whole thing fun. I just always drew when I was a kid. I always doodled, and it just came to me right away. So I always had a good time with it. Notebooks, my classes are all full of cartoons and little drawings and stuff like that, and I just always took to it. My parents encouraged me quite a bit too. Kids, they hone in on something that, a talent or whatever somebody might have, and then they, because a lot of people can't draw, and so it's fascinating to them. And I get kind of confused by that because it comes so easy to me, and I'm thankful that I'm lucky that happens. So I've always done it and always will do it.
Mark's work is one of these rare things that both appeals to the general public on a first viewing, because it's accessible in that sort of way. But the technique and the quality is so grand that, he tends to be an artist that other artists really appreciate as well. So, you have the whole spectrum there.
I guess painting came more later. It was the drawing that was really the focal point, without my meaning to. It's just where I naturally went, and I think it's served me well, So that's what a lot of the basis of my paintings have, a basic drawing underneath. I was brought up Roman Catholic, although I'm not a real heavy practicing Roman Catholic by any means. Just the religious aspect, I was influenced by Renaissance art that I thought was beautifully constructed, and then I like somehow the arches and nature sort of being the religious subject matter. Kind of a throwback to you'd have the portraits of nobility and stuff and being an archway, but this is kind of giving these, highlighting them. My strongest influence is like the old masters like Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Their old drawings that they did for studies and stuff that were all stained and pitted and that kind of thing. And I like that look. So in my attempt to try to recreate something like that, I end up with my own kind of a style. I wanted to do oils because I like the tactile sense of oils, that blending properties and everything else. But there's so many smells. It's it's a real strong smell, and I have lousy skin, and I would have reactions to it because of my skin, the oils and everything. So I had to drop that, and I had to use acrylic instead. But I had to figure out a way to get an oil look, because I didn't like the flat look of a lot of acrylic. So that's when I started just building up thin layers and washes, almost like egg tempera. And then I started mixing the media with the paint with water-based acrylic as a gel medium, and it would make sort of a semi-transparent way to build up layers without covering what was underneath, and just keep working it up that way. And then it just developed into a technique that I'm comfortable with. And I like the results it gives. It gives transparencies and opaques and a whole range of things in the finished works. And I actually was accepted at Mass College of Art, but art came so easy to me, I just thought, I don't know if I want to do this, I haven't really looked at everything else, and so I decided instead to go to UMass and just get a liberal arts education. I left, I got married. I was there for 2 years. I left and got married, and then I tried going back to school via night school, and that was too much of a bitch. It was going to take too long. So I went back to school full time, and this time at UMass again, and to get an art degree. So it was an art program. They had a lot of good studio stuff then, but they didn't really have much to get the students incorporated into real life situations, making art when they got out. I was in the restaurant business, so I was bussing tables when I was in college, so I stayed there, and then I went down the street, which was a busier restaurant, got a job there as a waiter, and eventually I was there 7 or 8 years, and I just went up the ladder doing all kinds of different jobs because I was raising a family, so I made myself available for whatever hours I needed. So I would learn how to cut meat, bartend, cook. I was eventually manager, assistant manager, and general manager for 2 or 3 years, I think. And then I left that. Then I had to go to another job, so labor job. I was managing a restaurant, like I said, I told you, it was the Gathering Restaurant in West Springfield. I was there, and one of my teachers who I always liked from college, James Hendricks, came in with his wife, Marcia Reed Hendricks at the time. She's also a painter. And he remembered me, and he encouraged me. He suggested that there was an exhibit coming up. The Springfield Art League used to have a annual exhibition at the Springfield museums, and it was tough to get in. They had pretty strict judging qualifications, and I didn't know anything about it. So I was working on a piece anyway, and I just submitted it, and without giving it a second thought, just kind of casually, just what the hell, and it got in, and won an award. So that was a huge encouragement to me. It just kind of boosted my ego a little bit and kind of changed my direction out of, not the restaurant frame of mind. I still had to work full time, but the idea that I could actually be a professional artist, maybe sell art. So I don't think it was too long after that I sent some photographs, just regular 5x7 on a whim, to Michelson Gallery. And they were these small pieces, photographs of these small pieces of the gardens at Tanglewood. And somebody there, I don't know if it was Rich, I think it was somebody who was working for him, really took to him and contacted me and said they'd like for me to bring some stuff, so I did. And that's how I got established with him initially. And I've stayed with him for now. Let's say I'm 53, so at least 20 years, 25 years.
I don't actually recall our first meeting. I think that if you sent in images, it's actually quite rare that we take things just kind of over the transom like that. Most of the artists who get into the gallery are either I've seen their work in an exhibition here or there, or they're a friend of a friend or something like that. But Mark's work, is just striking at first viewing, and it's different than many artists. There's great, he excels both in line and color, and that's fairly rare. Usually an artist is tipped one way or another way, and I think his choice of medium, which is also fairly unusual, in that he basically uses whatever's around and incorporates it to create, an amazing whole. So, would have struck my attention, and then seeing the work in real life just blew me away.
All my work seems to be, despite the fact that I've got so many people around me and family, everything, I don't ever seem to do portraits or anything like that. It's always seemed to be nature-based. And so I'm constantly just looking for things that interest me in nature and trying to make associations. And a lot of times I don't know where it's going. I mean, where the hell did that come from? A chickadee on a cutting tool. But I'd gone to a tag sale type or church bazaar type thing, and this guy had these tools there, and they were just cool little objects that interested me, their shapes, and so I grabbed them and figured out what I would do with them next. And I've got other stuff hanging around that I haven't used, but I probably will. It's been a few years. 96. I used to transport my kids back and forth to school, and I'd go through the 47 and country through there, and there was a lot of sunflowers there, so I just would stop and take pictures at the farms, and then go back and figure out how to put them together, crop them out. And I mostly isolated one or two flowers rather than a big field. And the way they caught sun, and also involved the skies in all of them too. dramatic. It's trying to be dramatic. That look of, you know, when you look up at these are all huge sunflowers. I don't know what variety they are, but they're you know, they're bigger than a basketball, the flower, you know. So they make all these huge dramatic backdrops to these gorgeous skies in the area. So it allowed me to play with that idea of looking up just this big blossom. This is about as big as I've worked, actually. This was earlier piece. This was when I went through a long phase of working with dried roses. And this is actually one rose that I draw and then turn and draw, turn and draw a third time. And then I have to work out the composition, the shadowing and that sort of stuff, because it's not actually those three roses, it's one rose, seen from three different directions. So you can sort of tell the way the leaves are lined up, the way it's twisted around, like this leaf here is this one. This leaf here is the back of this one. These birds are actually sketches out of one of my sketchbooks that I scanned into Photoshop and then built the composition around them and incorporating this is a photograph I caught of some trees near my home on a drive that was, I think must have been early winter, like November. And they're full of birds. They were full of crows. So I incorporated both of those together, and then also the music on the bottom. Again, it's a hymn with the archway and the celebration of nature, basically. I just kind of take it as it comes. I'd make the stuff anyway, and if I can sell it, that's like, you know, whipped cream on top of the cupcake, you know, because so I can keep going. I think the hardest thing was to learn how to part with the pieces. Because, you know, once you finish them, you give them up, and then somebody's going to buy them, and you probably won't see them again.